on the deepest wide receiver classes we've seen in recent memory, they don't draft a wide receiver, people would have said you were crazy. And that's like what they did. They actually drafted every position on offense except maybe possibly the position they needed the most. And as you said, early on, I think to me what that says is that they're going to make a commitment to running the ball. And Matt LaFleur touched on that heading into the season. And I think adding a guy like A.J. Dillon from Boston College, a ground and pound type of guy, I think we'll see a lot more of that combined with Aaron Jones this season.
Yeah, and Gutekunst was asked last night after the draft, after the third round completed, if the pick of Dillon especially, and Aguara as well, means that they're kind of trying to change the offense into more of the Kyle Shanahan type offense that you've seen the 49ers run. And that's obviously the background that Matt LaFleur comes from. And he kind of brushed it off, because you still have Aaron Rodgers. You had kind of a Shanahan McCarthy hybrid offense last year, was something that Rodgers was comfortable with, keeping some of those Mike McCarthy type elements around. But I think that is what it means, is you're probably going to shift to more of a run game, which is what LaFleur likes, run based. You marry the run with the pass, sets up the play action, and Aaron Rodgers can be deadly off play fakes. So yeah, if you can get that going one more year to, kind of work that in and get Rodgers comfortable in the offense, I think that the Dillon pick is Jordan Love aside, because that's its own storyline. But the Dillon pick in the second round is the most interesting pick to me of the draft, especially given you've got Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams already. Again, both of whom are set to become free agents after this year. So change could be coming.
Think about the contrast when you look at some of the other teams in the draft. Most teams are trying to play catch up with the Kansas City Chiefs. They're drafting some of the fastest guys possible to match up, offense with teams like the Chiefs, teams like the Ravens. But the Packers say, nope, we're going to go in a different direction, and we're going to run the ball next year. And I think when you have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers who can still get it done, obviously with his arm, that still makes them dangerous as well.
And the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, but look at some of the most productive teams in the regular season last year. The 49ers, who got to the Super Bowl, they had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. They were a run-based team. Packers fans know that all too well with how they ran all over the Packers in the NFC Championship. And the Ravens, who are a little bit different given the fact that they have a great running quarterback in Lamar Jackson, but they were a run-based team and went 14-2 in the regular season. So also the Titans, I guess if you want to throw them in there, beat the Ravens in the playoffs, went to the AFC Championship game. They're run first as well. So you're seeing a little bit of that come back in the NFL. And I think the Packers are probably going to be one of those teams that like to run the football. And that's number one for them is running. I think that's what this draft signifies.
I think looking back on the draft, one of the things that comes to mind is I wonder if I think when AJ Dillon was drafted, people were like, "Well, what about Aaron Jones?" Because obviously he is a free agent next year. To me, since they're going in this direction, it maybe only signals that they plan to probably bring him back. Because I don't think you make a move like this, specifically going straight to specifically drafting guys like more offensive linemen, bigger guys like that. If you plan to get rid of arguably one of the best running backs in the league a year later. So to me, maybe this is they already have a plan in place to bring Aaron Jones back for the years to come.
I hope so, and I think a lot of Packers fans also hope so, because you got one of the best playmakers in the league. The question with Jones, and this is kind of a different conversation aside from the draft, but it's what is he going to cost to bring back? Because you saw what Christian McCaffrey just brought in, a record-breaking running back contract. I don't think Jones is going to demand or command that much, but it's not going to be cheap to bring him back. And you've also got to re-sign David Bakhtiari, potentially Corey Linsley. You got to extend Kenny Clark yet. So there's a lot of money that's going to be put on the cap here pretty soon with some of these extensions.
Absolutely, and then you talked about some of their offensive linemen that they might have to re-sign next year, and obviously, as you saw, especially in the sixth round, how they they drafted a few linemen. Obviously, John Runyon, whose father played in the NFL out of Michigan, Jake Hansen from Oregon. So they're definitely adding some reinforcements to that offensive line.
Yeah, to recap the entire draft today, they had to wait till the fifth round because remember they traded their fourth round pick to go up and get Jordan Love on Thursday. So Kemal Martin, the first pick, an inside linebacker from across the border in Minnesota, has a background as a quarterback, very smart player, had a knee injury last year that caused him to miss the last 2 games of the season, missed 5 games in total, but a guy who they think can add a little bit more speed than, say, a Blake Martinez did, and maybe be a little bit more productive in pass coverage as well. Then you had the offensive lineman in the 6th round, John Runyon first. He's a guard, probably played tackle at Michigan, but probably will be a guard in the NFL. Jake Hansen, a center from Oregon, and then Simon Stepaniak, an offensive lineman, guard tackle, also can play both positions from Indiana. And then they finished with defense: Vernon Scott, a safety from TCU, and Jonathan Garvin, a defensive end from Miami in the 7th round. You touched on it a little bit earlier, Chance, but obviously the elephant in the room is no offensive linemen throughout the entire draft. I was thinking about that a little bit earlier. I would have liked to see them get a slot guy in particular, but you've obviously got Devontae Adams, who's one of the best guys in the league. Alan Lazard came on really strong last year. You signed Evan Funchess. They still believe Jake Kumro has a lot of potential. And then also another guy who I don't think people really realize is they brought in a guy named Reggie Begelton from the CFL, who had an outstanding year up in Canada last year. So he's kind of a project, and you'll see how he develops at wide receiver. They didn't go out and make a big splash and draft a Justin Jefferson or a T. Higgins or CeeDee Lamb or one of those guys in the 1st round, but there are players there at wide receiver who provide some depth, and the Packers clearly feel good about what they've got at that position.
Absolutely, and you see that since they didn't draft a wide receiver, or maybe Goody has a possible free agent target that he has in mind. Once they got to a certain point of maybe, as a term that he likes to use a lot over these press conferences, was following the board. So maybe as he followed the board, they didn't get one of the guys that they had up there. So they said, okay, maybe we have somebody in our back pocket, maybe in free agency, or maybe they have somebody they want to identify via trade. And I think it's interesting also looking at another team that definitely needed some wide receivers, definitely needed some more offensive weapons, like the Philadelphia Eagles. And their team, they definitely needed that. And they go out and they draft multiple wide receivers. And they trade for a slot speedy guy like Marquise Goodwin from the 49ers. I know Packers fans are seeing that and saying, what's going on with our team as they go through the draft and they don't grab any wide receiver weapons.
The Eagles also drafted a quarterback, which was kind of a head scratcher. They went and got Jalen Hurts from Oklahoma, previously played at Alabama, and they obviously have Carson Wentz in place. So that was another team that made a surprising quarterback pick. Chancellor, your overall takeaways from this draft, how do you grade it? I think it's a very confusing draft. That's the feedback you're getting from Packers fans. What is your takeaway from this draft now that it's finished?
As I touched on earlier, I think the biggest takeaway is that the Packers are going to transition completely to a more run-based team. We'll see a lot more play action from Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur on this offense, especially once you get into those winter months here in Green Bay, here at Lambeau Field. You'll definitely see them run the ball a lot more. To me, I think looking back on this draft, they don't – the picks that they made, I don't think it helps them win right now. And so for that, I'm going to go with a C minus, and that's probably not what the Packers want to hear, but I'm pretty sure a lot of Packers fans probably would agree with me in that aspect, because did they get any better than they were heading into this draft? I think the answer to that, as of right now, is no.
I'd go around the same, probably like a C, a little bit higher than a C minus. It's confusing. That's the one word I would use to describe it. Is it's kind of a confusing draft. What's your end game here? Because a lot of people thought you'd go wide receiver, inside linebacker, tackle early, and we didn't get any of those picks till day 3. No wide receivers at all. But I'm always of the mindset that you got to trust the guys who have put in work on this for months and months and months. And Brian Gutekunst and his team have spent a year since last year's draft preparing for this draft. They know the direction they want to take the team in. So I think you give the benefit of the doubt on that, and that's what brings me up to maybe a C plus. But if I'm not giving the benefit of the doubt, I'd go D minus. I'm not a big fan of the quarterback pick. Again, I trust the guys making the pick. They know what direction the franchise is heading in. But overall, I found it confusing.
I think something else to add to that point is outside of not adding some of the offensive weapons that I think most Packers fans would have hoped, some of the guys, as they were getting picked by the Packers, you would see outsiders' perspective of where they might have thought they might have been slotted. And it seemed like the Packers reached on quite a few of them. And I think that's also something that I would go from a C to a C minus. Now, of course, once again, you have to trust the the Packers staff and the scouts that they have here to do their job. But I think it is worth noting that from a national perspective, a lot of the guys they were kind of graded at lower rounds, or even possibly even undrafted. And I think that is interesting in the fact that the Packers may have drafted them a little bit higher than projected.
Well, here's a look at what's coming up. We'll be on the air with NBC 26 at 6 in just about 20 minutes. So I'll have a couple of reports there. You'll hear from a couple of today's draft picks. We'll take a closer look at today's specifically, how rounds 5 through 7 went for the Packers. Then later on this evening, we expect to hear from Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur, both of them to recap the day, recap the draft. That's the first time we'll hear from LaFleur since the pick of Jordan Love. So that'll obviously be the big topic there for the head coach. And we'll bring you some of that coming up on NBC 26 at 10 tonight. And then also at 10 tomorrow on Sunday night, we've got our draft recap show on the clock. Got some great things planned there. Chancellor, you're actually going to talk with Jordan Love's high school head coach to get to know him as a player a little bit better.
Absolutely. He's been coaching them while he was back in his hometown of Bakersfield. And he was actually there for his pre-draft party as well. And he was there as he was selected by the Green Bay Packers. So I think he can give us some great insight as what those moments were like leading up to the draft as well.
So that's what's coming up here. Continue to stick with us as we recap this draft for you on your official Packers station. Thanks for being with us, and we will see you on NBC 26 at 6.